Hello and welcome to Cornish Fishing Tales. So, watercraft, that's what we're talking about today. What is watercraft? Well, watercraft is the art of being able to read your surroundings, being able to look at certain clues, i.e. wildlife, things like that, the wind, weather, tide, rips, all sorts of information that you can see, hear and feel. Gut feelings is part of watercraft. Gut feelings, trust your gut feelings. Gut feelings can generally be right in fishing. Watercraft is the art of being in tune with your surroundings and catching more fish because you are not thinking like the average human. You're not thinking like that guy who's been on his phone all the way down and he's thinking about his Facebook or this and just rocks up, starts casting out, just expects to catch. Watercraft is the guy who turns up, doesn't use his phone, doesn't look at his phone, is completely connected with his surroundings and picks up on all those little clues that tell that person what's happening, where the fish could be, and how you could possibly catch more fish just by reading the surroundings. That's kind of the best description I can give it. It's a really deep subject. Carp fishermen go on about it an awful lot, and it's something very important in carp fishing. One example I can give you from carp fishing is part of watercraft is feeling your lead down. So not just casting your lead out when it hits the water, just letting it drop to the bottom. You're not learning anything by that. You don't know where you're fishing. So if you cast your rod out and you stop the line before it hits the water, and your lead will then pendulum down towards the bottom, and you're holding that line. When the lead hits the bottom, if it's a hard bottom, you'll get a real your rod tip will be bent over from the weight of that lead. When it hits the bottom, your rod tip goes like that, and you know you're on hard ground. Then if you get a real soft of the rod tip, you know you're on silt or weed, and if you don't feel anything at all, you're probably deep in weed and you're not even fishing. So that one little thing, not just casting out, but casting out and feeling your lead down, tells you so much more about where your bait is, how you're fishing, and whether you're going to catch a fish or not. What I'm going to try to do today is discuss a few different pointers, and then I'm going to call it mega spot number one. Me and Doug fished a spot last year when we was fishing on the bass sticks, and it was prolific. It was absolutely prolific. It was like a level on a computer game. The place is just unreal. But that was because we approached this spot and we learned every time we went, and we learned you can catch fish here, you can catch fish there, you can catch fish there. We went at low tide, we stayed until low tide and fished the tide in, so we saw the gullies, we saw everything. And I'm going to try and show you that on Google Maps, on a screenshot on the screen. I'll be kind of magic of video editing in the corner here talking about it, and I'm going to try and explain to you how we approached that spot, what we learned, and how we fish it now because of what we learned. And that is part of watercraft, learning the spot, learning the surroundings, and thinking not like a human, but almost thinking like your quarry, like a fish. If you learn where all the gullies are, and then you start thinking like a fish, you're going to have an idea of where they're going to move to, where they're going to be running through, and how you can intercept them. So let's get on with that. Okay, so first tip, and probably one of the most important, easiest things you can do to get an edge in watercraft, and it's something you can buy, fortunately. It's something you can go to a fishing shop or go on Amazon or whatever, and you can buy this edge. Polarized glasses. I cannot emphasize enough how important these things are. I wear them when it's raining. I wear them in all weathers. I don't wear them because they look cool. I don't wear them to protect my eyes. I mean, I do wear them to protect my eyes a bit, but I wear them because of the edge they give me. Polarized sunglasses. Light comes in two polar planes. You've got horizontal and vertical. And when you look at the water, you see the reflection of the light off the top of the water. Now, polarized glasses take away one of those polarized planes of light, which means that when you look at the water, you can see through it. You can see through the water, you can see the bottom, you can see the fish, you can see the bait fish, you can see rocks, gullies, weed. I mean, there's so much value from a pair of polarized sunglasses. I can't emphasize enough. Go and buy them. You can get a pair of polarized sunglasses for 10-15 quid these days. These ones are Fortis ones. I think those about 30 quid. I treated myself, but they are excellent and they have lasted me a good 2 years, I think now. So yeah, I recommend them highly. All the companies do them. Every single company does polarized sunglasses. Go and buy a pair of polarized sunglasses. Right, so now you've got your polarized sunglasses on. You can see the structure under the water. We'll read it. Look at it. If you're standing on a rock and you're walking around and you see a gully, well, fish it. Gullies are places bass will use as highways to search for food. They'll use it as a street. They'll swim around the gullies, round the gullies, just hunting for food. So if you find a gully, that's where the bass are going to come up and ambush things from. Find a gully, fish it, and try and work out. Go down to a spot at low tide. This is ultra important. If you want to fish a spot, you must go and see it at low tide, because you can see all that structure, the rocks, the sand, the gullies, and you could be fishing somewhere, the waves could be there, you can't see through the water because there's a load of foam on top. Polarized sunglasses aren't going to help you, but if you've been to that spot at low tide, then you've got a mental map of what it looks like in front of you, and you're going to see, well, there's this whole side of the beach here's sand, but on that right hand side there's a load of rocks. So I'm going to go and fish over the rocks, and then maybe the bit where the rocks reaches the sand, and you're probably going to catch more bass. The bass are going to invade those rocks looking for blennies, crabs, food basically, and there's going to be more food. Most of the time there's probably going to be more food over the rock structure and around the weed than there is out in the open. The sand on a beach, a bit like a desert really. You're going to have times where there's shoals of fish moving around those sandy beaches and stuff. So the bass do hunt around there, but when the water floods those rocky areas, the bass are going to be in there like a shot. They're going to go straight in there. So visit places at low tide. Give yourself a mental idea. Don't just look at water and think it's just water. There's something underneath that. It's like, and you need to be thinking of what's underneath that water at all times, so you can kind of get your lure in those areas where bass will sit and hide. They're not always swimming around. When they're really hunting, they're swimming around and they're trying to find food. But there'll be a certain period of time that they're not going to do that all day. You don't run around all day, do you? You sit down at certain times a day. So the bass are going to kind of do the same thing, and in those situations they're going to be sitting in dips, under rocks, in gullies, in pools at the bottom. They're going to be hiding, waiting for something to just swim over the top of them, and if that thing looks ultra enticing, they're going to attack it and eat it, and they will do that whether they're hungry or not. My PB bass I caught last year, that had, I think it had 3 mackerel in its belly, and it still took a lure. It still took a lure. That bass wasn't hungry. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't needing food. I very much doubt it was swimming around searching for food, but my lure went over its head and it wanted it, so it had it. Yeah, so look at the structure of the place you're fishing at low tide. Rip currents. Rip currents. If you're on a rip currents, bass travelling rip currents, bass use rip currents, bass use the rip currents. Bait fish will get caught in rip currents and it will be too strong for them and they'll be struggling, and they are complete easy prey for bass in rip currents. So if you see a rip, fish it. Fish a rip. And you're going to say to me, well, what does a rip look like? And if you're looking at an expanse of water and there's almost like a thing going out, almost looks like there's oil on the water. It looks a bit stiller, it just looks different. the current in the water is different. It just looks different. A rip is a fast moving stretch of water. If you get caught in a rip, you'll get sucked right out. And if you swim against it, you probably get exhausted and die. If you stay in it, you'll eventually come back into land somewhere else. And that's what a rip tide is. A rip is the movement of the water in or out. When the tide's going in or out, the water has to go in or out, if you get what I'm saying. And the rip currents are the action of the water doing that. So sometimes you get a rip pulling out, sometimes you'll get a rip pulling in, sometimes you get a rip left to right, and you can kind of see them on the water. You will know what I mean when you go and look next time you're fishing. But yeah, fish the rips, fish in and around the rips, use the rips. When you're pulling your lure back in a rip, and that rip's pulling out, slow your retrieve right down. You can almost stop a lure in a rip, and that, if you're using a paddle tail, that paddle tail will be going like 10 to a dozen, and that lure won't be moving anywhere, and the fish will look at that, like, that fish is struggling in that rip, and that can't even swim away from me, I'm going to eat it. So yeah, rips. Look at the rips, study the rips, fish the rips, learn about rips. Structure. Let's imagine this is the bottom, this is the top of a bit of water, a body of water, and there's a big rock that does that. Now, as I was saying, sometimes a rip goes like that, sometimes a rip goes like that. And let's say this rock here, there's a rip going that way. Now, what side of that rock would you cast to? What side of the rock do you think the bass would sit? If they sit behind one side of the rock, they're protected from the rip. So they've not got to swim so hard. They can just sit there and wait for something to come over the top of them. If the rip's going that way and we've got a rock here, the bass will probably sit that side. And that's because anything caught in that rip struggling that can't get away is struggling, comes over there, they're sitting here, they see it come over, the bait can't see it, the bait can't see the bass until it's over there. The bass just boom, up, down, back and wait. So if there's a piece of structure, think about the water and what it's doing, which way is the flow going, and then the bass will be sitting the other side of the flow, downstream of the flow, waiting for something to come across, get washed across, a bit of injured or dead bait, or just a piece of food, or a struggling fish, in the rip, bang, up and kill it. So yeah, structure, think about structure. Gullies are structure, drop-offs are structure, kelp beds are structure. They're all hiding places for the predator and also for the prey. Rock boulder fields are full of crabs. Those bass are going to be swimming around them, looking for crabs, looking for blennies swimming around, looking for all sorts of stuff. Think about the structure that you're fishing over. In my personal opinion, just boring sand is probably not the best structure to be fishing over. If there's a bit of sand and there's some rocks there, fish the edge of it, fish over the rocks. Structure is your friend. Structure is where fish will gravitate to, both bait fish and predator fish. Predator fish will use it for an ambush point, bait fish will use it for a hiding place. So yeah, the structure is your friend. Look for structure. Surf and the foam on the top of the water that's caused by surf. I know I just said that fish over rocks, not sand, but if you are fishing a beach that is mainly sand, what are the waves like? If it's flat, it's probably not going to be great. It tends to be the way it is with bass. They like a bit of surf, they like a bit of movement in the water. If there's some waves and you get those parts of the beach, sometimes at certain points of the tide going in and out, where the waves break and go, and they leave a big foamy, milky look to the top of the water. Now, that is ideal for bass to be ambushing. It takes the light out of the water, so it makes it a little bit less easy to see. They can't be seen so easily, blah, blah, blah. They feel safer because they're not so out in the open in the desert. It's like a desert really, the sand, isn't it? It's like an open expanse of nothing be seen from above, and they're not too keen on that. So yeah, look for those foamy areas of water, and don't fish the area where the waves are breaking. Go and fish that foamy area of water. That's where the bass will be. That's where the bass will come into. Wildlife. Yeah, wildlife. I mean, the birds, the seals, predators, wildlife, bait fish. If you see a bait ball boil in the water, that's where the fish are. If the bait ball's over there, move, go over there. I was fishing a spot a few years ago now, and I was fishing away for the bass. Wasn't much happening, but I could see over on the headland over there was a mass of birds. There was like 500, 1,000 birds, and there was a big bait ball boiling the water underneath them. So I got packed up, got in the car, drove around to the headland and fished there, and I had an amazing session on mackerel. I caught so many mackerel. Looking back now, I should have live baited the mackerel. I should have put on a really big lure and tried to get underneath the bait ball, and there probably was some bass out under there. So that's one example, bait fish. If you're seeing bait fish around, if you're standing on the point and you've got your sunglasses on and you're looking down into that water and you're fishing, you're thinking, oh, it's not going very well, I'm not seeing much, might move in a bit, and then you start to see sand eels come in, big shoulder sand eel, and they swim one way and then they swim the other, right against the margins. Stay there. If the bait have turned up like that, the bass are probably going to turn up after. There's been so many times where I've been fishing a beach or a rock spot, and I've been like, oh, this is not working, I'm going to go in a bit of an hour or so, and nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden I start seeing bait fish around, sand eels at my feet, and I kind of think, okay, I'm going to give this a bit longer, because there's going to be some bass turning up in a minute. They might have chased these bait fish in, and 9 times out of 10 the bass turn up. So yeah, bait fish. Seals. So many people I know say, oh, I hate seals, can't stand seals, bloody thing, they drive me mad. Whenever I go fishing, there's a seal there. That's what's wrong with that? That's great. If there's a seal there, bet you there's fish there. I bet you there's fish there. Seals and cormorants and those predatory birds, gulls, they've got more watercraft than all of the anglers in Cornwall put together. It's probably more watercraft than all of the anglers in the world put together, I'd say. Every seal and every cormorant out there, each one has more watercraft than we could even imagine. Their lives depend on it. If they're not reading that water and understanding what's going on and understanding their quarry and where their quarry is going to be when they want to eat, they go hungry. They've got no supermarket to go to buy something. If they can't hunt it, they can't go home from fishing empty-handed like us and go and get fish and chips from the fish and chip shop. So seals, I love seeing seals when I go fishing. If there's 30 seals and they're all competing, and yeah, you're gonna probably, if you catch it, you're probably gonna catch a fish, but you're probably gonna struggle to get it in. But then I'd rather that than go somewhere where there's no seals and not catch any fish, because there's no fish either. But I'll give you another example. Me and Dunk, there's a video up there of this. We fished a spot last autumn, about September time, and we had 21 bass between us in 40 minutes. It was epic. It was unreal. And no word of a lie, there was a seal sat in front of us with his head poked out, watching us fish all the time. Every single minute we were there, that seal was there. And he didn't take one fish, and I believe that seal knew the fish were there. He'd already eaten his fill, and he was just enjoying watching us do it. He might have been learning off us. He might have been using his watercraft to learn how we were doing it and what we were doing, and whether he could learn anything and how to better his angling from us, which I don't think he would have done. But that's the thing. These seals, they are very clever, very, very good at hunting bass, very good at hunting fish. If they're there and they're hunting, even better. Cormorants, same thing. Cormorants are there. There's probably food. There's at least bait fish around. So yeah, observe the wildlife, watch it. Don't, if a seal turns up, don't pack up and go. It's if you lose a fish, you lose a fish. If you get a fish on and lose it, in my opinion, it's better than not having any fish at all. And if you move away from seals consistently, you're probably moving away from fish, and that's not good fishing. That's just not, in my eyes, that's not successful fishing. That's not using your knowledge and experience to catch more fish. It's just backwards, in my opinion. So yeah, there you go, wildlife. Right, and now I'm going to try and put what I'm just telling you into a practical kind of example. I don't know how this is going to work out. I'm trying my best to try and convey what I've got in my head on video and stuff. So yeah, and try and explain it to you as best as I can. I'm going to now transport, with the magic of video editing, into a screenshot from Google Maps of a spot that me and Dunk fished last year that was prolific. However, I think the way that we fished it helped us. I had seen a few other people down there, but no one ever fished it the same as me and Dunk did. Everyone seemed to fish the bay, and I think that's because it was easier, and you're less likely to lose lures, and it's a bit deeper, a bit cleaner ground. But like I'm saying, that's not necessarily where the bass are going to be. And everyone I'd seen, I'd never really seen people catch much, but me and Dunk caught loads. But we fished it differently. We approached it differently. So yeah, I'm going to transport there now and trying to explain to you what I mean. Well, I'm not there, am I? I'm gonna have to say sorry. I've just baited you, basically. I've just put all that video on and sort of edited it up, and it went out 20 odd minutes. And if I now start talking about that spot, most of you are going to get bored and turn off the video. So I'm going to do that as the next video, guys. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do that now, edit it, and that'll be the next one that comes up. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you've learned something. And tune in again a day or so for the next episode, because you're probably going to learn more from that practical example than you are about me just talking about seals and rips and things like that. So I'm going to kind of tell you how we've approached this, how we learned things, and how we now fish it as a result of that, and the benefits we get from that. Right, tight lines, guys. See you soon.